Hello and welcome back to the third episode of Worst to First, the series where I take a year-by-year look at each and every competing team in the Formula One World Championship, ranking each team livery according to my own personal dispositions. In this episode I'll be winding the clock back to the 1985 season, which took place during the height of the original turbo era. A season in which a sum total of 10 different engine manufacturers were present within the F1 paddock, supplying a total of 17 teams, with a mixture of inline 4, V6 and V8 turbocharged power. It was a season in which McLaren's dominance of 1984 came to an end, thanks to the improved standard of competition from the likes of Ferrari, Lotus, Renault and Williams, whose partnership with Honda was beginning to bear fruit. Nonetheless, Alain Prost, a driver whom in the eyes of many was unlucky to have missed out on championships in the previous two seasons, was destined to claim his first driver's mantle in season 1985, whilst McLaren's triumph in the Constructors' Battle would prove to be the final piece of silverware for the famed Tag-Porsche connection. A season of fluctuating fortunes, the end of which saw two of the sport's most recognised factory teams, Renault and Alfa Romeo, taking a step away from the Formula One spotlight, assuming roles within the sport as engine suppliers heading forward, whilst burgeoning teams such as ZAKSPEED and MINARDI were beginning to spread their wings. Long-standing opponents of the turbo regime, TYRRELL, would finally strike up a deal which saw the team competing with Renault V6 turbo engines before the season's end, an event which marked the first time since 1967 that a Formula One grid did not feature at least one car powered by a naturally aspirated Cosworth DFV engine. Turbo engines were very much the order of the day, with a whole host of interpretive and groundbreaking, yet temperamental engine designs coming to the fore, necessitating the need for a greater number of resources than ever before, which in turn propelled the cost of running a Formula One team through the roof. And so, without any further introduction, let us now take a closer look at these fire-breathing, turbocharged giants. Despite the best intentions of team owner John Wickham, the beleaguered Spirit Racing team was only able to make it through the opening 3 rounds of the 1985 season. During that time, the team would run with a plain white livery, in the hope of picking up a major sponsor. The desired sponsorship would never materialise, and interestingly enough the team would make a return to its red, white and blue colour scheme for its final Grand Prix weekend at Imola. Indeed, this change is an improvement over the previously seen white livery, and features a sensible choice of colours which had come to represent the small British team over the years. Sadly though, for the fading Spirit team, it isn't a terribly exciting livery, and doesn't really do enough for me to lift them off the bottom of this list. Coming in at number 16 is OSELLA, with its trusted shade of azure, in the third and final year of its association with Kalamata. This is a livery with potential, but what stops it from advancing further up the rankings is a lack of consistency. Like most of the smaller teams, OSELLA's sponsorship arrangements would waver as the season transpired. For the most part, the short-term deals negotiated by the team would result in sponsors' logos appearing on the car in a very haphazard manner, at times introducing foreign colours which tended not to match all too well with OSELLA's primarily light blue identity. And so OSELLA continued to occupy a lowly rank. Arguably one of the hardest tasks in Formula One is establishing a visual presence which sets you apart from the pack, and in the case of the debuting ZAKSPEED team, it seems there was very little that could have been done with the team's West sponsorship when it came to avoiding comparisons with McLaren's well-known Marlboro colour scheme. As a result of West appearing for the first time on a Formula One car, we have ZAKSPEED running with a red and white combination, with West highlighted in black text. To me, it feels as though the tobacco brand could have made a greater effort to create a unique image for themselves, rather than settle on the same colour combination used by the then reigning world champions. In the years to follow, the team's West livery would come with a greater presence of black, which in my opinion enhanced the team's look. However, in the case of ZAKSPEED's 1985 livery, the team still had some way to go. In at number 14 is the team which was the subject of one of my most recent videos, TOLEMAN. By 1985, the team had joined forces with Benetton, making way for an interesting livery which encapsulates that international feel that would come to be associated with Benetton over the years. Whilst I like the idea of this livery, and maximum points must be given to the team for originality, I feel that this livery design might have looked a little bit better on the drawing board than it did on track, and when viewed from a distance the various flags which cover the car are hard to distinguish. I'm sure there are many of you that will probably disagree with me on this one, but despite the different perspective this livery offers, along with being one of the few Formula 1 team liveries to run with a charitable message on display in musical supergroup USA for Africa, it isn't a design that particularly resonates with me. By all means, Tyrrell must be commended for sticking with tradition in the face of adversity in 1985, and regular viewers of the series will know I appreciate it when teams opt for their own traditional racing colours. However, by the time 1985 came around, this was an action the team took out of financial necessity more than anything else. Throughout the year, the team would link up with a few different sponsors on a short-term basis, but sadly long-term sponsorship wasn't to be found. Resultingly, I just don't feel the livery packs the same punch as it once did, and since Tyrrell wasn't the only team racing with blue at this particular point in time, the team would have a harder time establishing itself from the rest of the field. And so Tyrrell find themselves lining up in 13th position. Up next we have Arrows, with what is in my opinion the best of the team's Barclay sponsored cars. The thing I most appreciate about the team's 1985 car over its other Barclay era liveries is the addition of DeLonghi sponsorship, which adds a colourful presence on the car's side pods, as well as the smart looking diagonal tricolour upon the front of the car, in deference to the team's engine supplier BMW. Both of these features assist in dressing up the otherwise non-vibrant colour scheme of the team's titular sponsor. Personally, I've always felt Barclay's company colours were always rather bland, and whilst some might enjoy the soft, creamy colours associated with Barclay, I've always felt they tended to detract from most team liveries they appeared on. That being said, as a finished product, the livery is actually quite colourful, yet I wasn't able to find a higher slot for the team than 12th. Coming in at number 11 is what I feel is a really underrated livery in the Beatrice-sponsored HAAS Lola entry. Not to be confused with the modern-day HAAS Formula 1 team, the Carl Haas-owned team made its Formula 1 debut at the 1985 Italian Grand Prix, looking to come to terms with the sport ahead of a major push with turbo forward engines the following year. Personally, I think the team did a great job in making the most out of its red, white and blue colour combination, creating a livery which tips its hat towards its American roots, and really stands out thanks mainly to a pleasing contrast between the deep shades of red and blue. In a way similar to ZAKSPEED, it could have been considered unwise for HAAS to run with a primarily red livery due to the presence of a certain long-standing Italian team, but I think the livery does more than enough to distinguish itself on track, and I would have no problem at all spotting the difference between this and the Ferrari at first glance. Following on from HAAS, we have yet another debutante team in MINARDI, which bursts onto the scene with its classic yellow and deep blue livery in full glory. The 1985 design is a simple one, with yellow employed as a contrast colour, highlighting the car's side pods and wings, as well as forming a debonair V upon the front of the vehicle. Overall, this is a neat and tidy livery, which possesses originality and sophistication. In true Minardi fashion, it comes with a litany of sponsors, and the team has managed a wonderful job of weaving each of them into the livery without having the car seem cluttered, something that cannot always be said for smaller teams with a barrage of minor sponsors, including Minardi itself. Minardi would continue to evolve its classic look over the next few years, continually improving its look as time went on, though this prototypical version of the livery is still pleasing enough to award Minardi 10th spot. From Tyrrell to Toleman to Ensign, Candy had been seen in Formula 1 in many different capacities leading up to 1985, but when the appliance brand linked up with Ligier, I feel it created probably the best Candy-inspired livery seen in the sport. Whilst the concept isn't all that vastly different to liveries utilised by the team in years gone by, I feel it's the suave choice of blue along with the livery's diagonal lines, which gives Ligier a really polished look in 1985. Candy, as well as the team's other sponsors, had no problem settling in with the team's long-standing GITANES patronage, whilst as the season went on the team would eventually add more colour to the car, with further touches of red only serving to enrich the overall look. And so, with a livery that happened to get better as the season unfolded, Ligier lines up in 9th spot. Effectively, one of the keys to creating a noticeable team livery is to create an image which makes the car look quick, and that's the way I've always felt about the Brabham cars of the early 80s. However, by 1985 the livery concept was beginning to decline, and this would be the first Brabham car to run without Parmalat sponsorship in several years. Olivetti assumes the role previously held by Parmalat, appearing as the team's sole major sponsor on a car that was by now beginning to look a little bare, and was also missing a few of the key features that made it so imposing during the earlier part of the decade. All things considered, the Brabham livery on its own is still quite eye-catching, and the clever yet subtle integration of BMW branding on the car's side pods is a nice touch that keeps Brabham from sliding too far down this list. It's quickly becoming obvious to me that Ferrari are the proverbial yardstick when it comes to measuring Formula 1 liveries, as year in, year out the team are almost certain to produce a livery rich in the tradition the team is known for. And realistically, most teams which rank higher than the Scuderia in this series have in my opinion produced something extra special. As far as tradition goes, this year's car is no exception, as the 165/85 bears all of the hallmarks associated with the famous Italian squad. From the car's classic paint job, to its black Goodyear sponsored wings, to its yellow team badges and iconic Agip sponsorship. Even the font chosen for the driver's numbers. Each of these facets scream classic Ferrari, and it's hard for any fan of the sport not to get a rush of nostalgia from looking at a Ferrari car from this time frame. Coming in at number 6 is a choice that may very well divide opinions in the SKOAL Bandit sponsored Ram Formula 1 team. To me, this is a really snappy colour combination, what with the crisp shade of white working alongside a navy green backdrop, along with its yellow and bright green diagonal tones. The car looks much livelier than it actually performed. It also happened to be a refinement over the previous year's SKOAL Bandit livery. Sadly though, this livery, along with the Ram team itself, would bow out of Formula 1 after 1985. Nonetheless, for its truly unique and dazzling colour combination, Ram comes home in a respectable 6th. Reaching the top 5 in this countdown is Alfa Romeo, in what would turn out to be its final season of Formula 1 activity for more than 3 decades. The short-lived marriage between Alfa and Benetton, at least from a livery perspective, was in my opinion a happy one, as it perfectly combines Benetton's famous shade of green and Alfa's classic red, and gives an opportunity for both companies to shine. I particularly appreciate the livery used for the 184 TB chassis, for its subtle manner in which Alfa's red pops up on the car's nose section and engine case, along with the tasteful addition of Alfa Romeo text. This livery design would effectively serve as the Benetton template heading into 1986, when Benetton took over TOLEMAN and began racing on its own terms. Moreover, it's a vast improvement over the previously seen Marlboro Alfa liveries, and the team was able to cultivate a more distinctive look when they finally switched title sponsors. At number 4 we have the very first of the CANON Williams liveries. From the very outset, this livery design proved to be a truly spectacular work of art, and would provide Williams with an aggressive look that the team would carry with them for the next 8 seasons. CANON's red works as the perfect contrast colour to the car's blue and yellow upper section, with the two colours coming together nicely in a forward-facing V formation, a feature exclusive to the 1985 livery. This would also be the season in which we first saw the famous Red 5 as Nigel Mansell joined the team. For the first in a line of truly stunning and iconic liveries, Williams lines up in 4th. Admittedly, it's going to be very hard for me to dislodge the McLaren cars from this time from the top spots, as a certified classic livery such as this simply cannot be denied. When it comes to Marlboro McLaren liveries, the 1985 vintage is one of the better ones to boot, with each of the team's smaller sponsors featuring in their own distinctive, well thought out way alongside Marlboro. SAIMA makes a big impression on the car's cockpit visor, whilst Hugo Boss is easily distinguishable, situated beneath the drivers' names on the car's airbox. Add to this the beginning of McLaren's partnership with the fuel suppliers Shell, whose logo was seen on the car's nose cone, and we have a genuinely well-executed livery which carries a variety of sponsors, yet still has space to breathe, and is probably the best variant of the Marlboro livery we had seen up until this point. No matter which way you slice it, the JPS Lotus livery is another stalwart and historically significant livery design that cannot be underappreciated, and so I am more than happy to rank it here in 2nd spot. Everything about this livery oozes class of the highest order, from its commanding presence of black to its emblematic gold trim. The way John Player special branding was replaced by championship wreaths at tobacco ban races was a special touch typical of the trailblazing British team. New sponsors Olympus cameras blend in seamlessly with this hallmark design that represents the glory years of not only Team Lotus, but arguably the sport itself, which even in today's day and age remains highly influential. And in 1st place we have what I consider to be an absolute home run, and the very best of Renault's liveries from their initial F1 foray. This time around the team has modelled its design around the company's diamond logo, with the team's yellow, black and white colours coming together to form a remarkably focused look for the team. My 2 favourite features of this livery are the black and white pinstripes, which appear along the side of the car and upon the rear wing, as well as the digital, tech-looking font used for the driver's numbers, which gives the livery an overall futuristic 80s Blade Runner vibe. On top of this, we have the wonderful contrast between the red of Patrick Tombay's car and the blue of his teammate Derek Warwick's car. This busy and highly energetic livery sees Renault attain a spot on the highest step of the rostrum, as well as granting the team a well-deserved taste of the champagne. And there we have it, each of the 17 Formula 1 team liveries from 1985 ranked worst to first. Like always, I am interested to hear what your thoughts are from the liveries of this season, and if you would like to have a say in which year I cover next in the worst to first series, please feel free to make a nomination in the comments section below. Until we meet again, F1 fans, I bid you farewell.